There is a block of wood. It has not been cut, carved, sanded, or polished. It has no shape, no function, no name. It is simply wood in its original state before any craftsman has imposed a design upon it. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu called this the Uncarved Block. It is one of his most potent images. The uncarved block is the original nature of things. When it is cut, it becomes instruments. The sage using it becomes the chief of ministers. The uncarved block is not nothing. It is not empty. It is not a void waiting to be filled. It is fullness without form, all potential, no actuality. Every possible vessel, every possible tool, every possible ornament is latent within it, but none of these possibilities have been realized. The block is not a chair, it is not a table, it is not a sculpture, it is not firewood, it is not a doorstep. It is simply wood. And because it is nothing in particular, it can become anything at all. This is the opening paradox of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Lao Tzu does not say that the Tao is unknowable. He says that it is unnameable. The difference is critical. Something unknowable is beyond the reach of the human mind. We cannot grasp it, we cannot understand it, cannot relate to it. It is a permanent mystery, sealed behind an impenetrable veil. Something unnameable, by contrast, is precisely that which cannot be fixed in a single designation. It is not that we cannot know it, it is that we cannot limit it. To name something is to define it, to draw a boundary around it, to say this and not that, but the Tao is not this and not that. It is both, neither and beyond. The name is a carving. It cuts the uncarved block into a particular shape. That shape is useful. A chair is good for sitting. A table is good for eating. A sculpture is good for contemplating. But the shape is not the block, and the block is all shapes and none. Lao Tzu says the eternal Tao is the uncarved block. It has not been cut, it has not been named, it is pure potential, undifferentiated fullness, the source from which all particular things arise. And because it has not been named, it can be the source of all names. Now consider chapter 11 of the Tao Te Ching. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the empty space at the center that makes the wagon useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the empty space within the vessel that make it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the empty space that makes the room useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there. Usefulness comes from what is not there. Lao Tzu is not a mystic speaking in riddles. He is a structural analyst. He has noticed that every functional object has two components, the material and the void. The wagon wheel requires spokes and a hub. These are the there. But it also requires the empty space at the center, the space that receives the axle. Without that emptiness, the wheel cannot turn. It is just a wooden disc. The clay vessel requires walls and a base. These are the there. But it also requires the hollow interior, the space that holds the water. Without that emptiness, the vessel cannot contain. It is just a lump of clay. The room requires walls and a roof. These are the there. But it also requires the empty volume between them, the space that people inhabit. Without that emptiness, the room cannot shelter. It is just a pile of bricks. Profit comes from what is there. Usefulness comes from what is not. The uncarved block is the original there, the material, the substance, the stuff. But its usefulness lies in its capacity to receive form, to become empty in particular ways, to host the voids that make it functional. The Tao is not the form, it is not the void, it is the uncarved block that can become both. Now we must ask, what is the relationship between the Tao and the world? Lao Tzu answers in chapter 42, the Tao produced one, one produced two, two produced three, three produced the 10,000 things. This is not a chronological sequence, it is a logical derivation. The Tao is the uncarved block, undifferentiated, unnamed, without attributes. It is not a thing among things, it is the source from which all things arise. The One is the first differentiation, the primordial unity, the beginning of determination. It is not yet many, but it is no longer none. It is the Tao beginning to move. The two are the polarities, yin and yang, being and non-being, fullness and emptiness, activity and receptivity. They are the fundamental opposites that, in their interplay, generate all complexity. The three is the relationship between the polarities, the dynamic tension, the productive harmony, the dance of opposites. It is not a third thing alongside the two, it is the principle of relation that makes the two fruitful. The 10,000 things are a manifold of existence, all the particular beings, forms, events, and processes that constitute the universe. And all of them, from the 1 to the 10,000, are the Tao. Not the Tao as undifferentiated source, but the Tao as differentiated expression. The uncarved block becomes the carved vessel. The vessel is not other than the block, it is the block, now shaped, now hollowed, now useful. The Tao does not produce the world as a carpenter produces a chair, external to the material, imposing form from without. The Tao produces the world as a seed produces a tree, unfolding from within, expressing its own potential, becoming what it always was. The world is the Tao in motion. The Tao is the world at rest. This is why Lao Tzu insists on Wu Wei, non-action, or more precisely, non-forced action. The Tao never acts, yet nothing is left undone. This is not a command to do nothing, it is a description of how the Tao operates. It does not force, manipulate, or control, it simply is, and in its being, all things arise. The sage imitates the Tao. He does not impose his will on the world. He does not strive, struggle, or scheme. He aligns himself with the natural order, and his actions flow from that alignment. The sage dwells in the world serenely, harmoniously. In his heart, he makes no arbitrary distinctions. The people all fix their eyes and ears on him, and the sage treats them all as his children. This is not passivity. It is responsiveness. The sage does not initiate, he responds. He does not command, he invites. He does not carve, he releases the form that is already latent in the block. Wu Wei is the art of not interfering. It is the recognition that most problems are caused by our attempts to solve them. The more we push, the more the world pushes back. The more we carve, the more the block resists. But if we wait, if we listen, if we attend to the grain of reality, the form reveals itself. The block becomes a vessel, not because we forced it, but because we allowed it. The uncarved block is patient. It will wait forever. The question is whether we will wait with it. Now we must confront the central problem of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao is the source of all things. It is the uncarved block, the undifferentiated fullness, the mother of the 10,000 things. It is good, wise, powerful, and eternal. And it is silent. It does not speak, it does not command, it does not reveal itself. It does not enter history, perform miracles, or dictate laws. It simply is, and in its being, All things arise and pass away. This silence is not a flaw, it is essential to the Tao's nature. If it spoke, it would be a particular thing, speaking particular words. It would no longer be the undifferentiated source of all things. It would be a God among gods, not the Tao beyond all gods. But the silence is also a problem. For the 10,000 things, including human beings, are not silent. We speak, we ask questions, we seek answers, we long for a word from the source. The Tao does not answer, it simply continues to produce, sustain, and absorb. It is the mother who gives birth and then withdraws, leaving her children to find their own way. This is why Confucius said, "Does heaven speak? The 4 seasons pursue their courses, and the 100 creatures are born." Does heaven speak? Heaven does not speak, the Tao does not speak, the Uncarved Block does not speak. And yet we speak, we ask, we long. The silence of the Tao is not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning of our seeking. There is a later Taoist text, the Chuang Tzu, that pushes this problem to its limit. A man dreams he is a butterfly. He flits among the flowers, unaware that he is a man. Then he wakes and he is a man again, uncertain whether he is a man who dreamed he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he is a man. Chuang Tzu does not resolve the uncertainty. He does not tell us which is real. He says there must be a distinction between the man and the butterfly. This is called the transformation of things. The transformation of things, that is all. No answer, no resolution, no word from the source. The butterfly does not ask whether it is real. It simply flies. The man does not ask whether his dream was true. He simply wakes. The Tao does not answer our questions. It transforms. And transformation, unlike speech, is silent. So here's what you've learned. You've learned that the Tao is the uncarved block, undifferentiated, unnamed, full of all potential and no actuality. It is not nothing, it is the fullness from which all particular things arise. You have learned that the Tao produces the world through emanation, not creation. It unfolds from within, expressing its own nature in the 10,000 things. The world is not separate from the Tao, it is the Tao in motion. You have learned that the sage imitates the Tao through wu-wei, non-forced action. He does not impose his will on reality. He aligns himself with the natural order, and his actions flow from that alignment. And you have learned that the Tao is silent. It does not speak, command, reveal, or answer. It is the mother who withdraws, leaving her children to find their own way. Heraclitus said, the universe is a sentence spoken by an unseen speaker. Lao Tzu said, the universe is an uncarved block, patient and silent, waiting to receive the form that is already latent within it. They were describing the same reality from opposite sides. The sentence waits to be spoken, the block waits to be carved. The question is not whether they will be, the question is who will speak, who will carve. The rain is still falling, the ceiling is still there, the block is still uncarved, but somewhere in the silence a hand is reaching for the chisel. Thank you.